This is Gatwick Airport, but we've got many different departments. We are a tight-knit community, and at the end of the day we're all looking for the same thing, and that's to make our passengers' journey the best possible experience. Surface transport is the capillaries that take the passengers to and from our airports into the terminals, which is the heartbeat of the airport. So it's all one interconnected system.
Central from Delta 2, just to give you an update on the road traffic collision on the Welcome Roundabout South Terminal. Stand down, all roads are now open.
We look after all the parking across the estate, whether it's the long stays, the valets, the short stays. As a company, M-Park, we look after the car parks on behalf of the client, which is Gatwick Airport. I like to think that all the contractors, we all work together to achieve the same goal, which is to provide a good customer service to the customer so they're able to come back and use the airport.
And this is the South Terminal maintenance area for the shuttle system. This is where the shuttle team do all of their nightly maintenance and daytime routine tasks. Each train's done around 700,000 miles now. If we don't keep on top of our work schedule, the worst thing is the safety part of the system is affected. So we must keep on top of our maintenance in order to keep it as safe as possible for the passengers. So if you hear a disco at night, we're doing some hard work.
An airport is an entity by itself because you have everything there. You have your paramedic, you have your fire brigade, you have your police, you have your own restaurant. It's a whole world. GCC is part of the State Blocks department. You collect information and you put it out there. And that is our, I would say, main role. Anything come to the airport, we take care of it. It's simple as that.
Every day's different, no day's the same working here. And you're always meeting new people, passengers are really friendly, staff always friendly. It's good, I like it.
Terminal operations is the heartbeat of the airport. We communicate with all the operations within Gatwick, with our retail team, with all our handling agents and our airlines. Everyone's got your back, you're supported, everyone's very friendly. You walk around, everyone smiles, says hello to you. Gatwick definitely feels like a family.
On a peak day through the North Terminal, we'd probably have 45,000 passengers go through, and that would be probably in the region of about 30,000 bags. Focus on the passenger journey, you know, every element of that has got to work to become the most efficient single airport runway in the world.
Yeah, I believe there's a good feel to the place. I mean, I've been here 19 years now, so you know, if I didn't like it, I think I'd have left by now. You do come in, different challenges. It's always evolving.
I do feel like people in the team have my back and I have their back. If we didn't have that close cooperation, that would have made this project all the more challenging. We were really successful and working very closely with Jamie's and our teams across Gatwick to deliver what is now a great restaurant.
As a contractor at Gatwick, it has enormous challenges working around a live environment where you've got passengers and staff that have no idea of the risks of what goes on behind the hoardings. There's a good relationship between us and the Gatwick project team. We work well together.
The best bit about working here is working with customers and my colleagues. It's a very good team to be part of and I'm proud to work for them.
I think the good thing about this job is that every day is a challenge because we have an important role to improve the on-time performance, so we know what our targets are. Every flight you go to is a challenge to get that one out on time.
Regardless of what company you work for, everyone does try and help out with each other all the time. Our friendships are made at Gatwick, 100%. It's a big family, and that's what makes the place. That's the reason why I think the majority of people do work here.
So welcome back, Chris. Can you hear us okay?
Indeed.
Fantastic. Well, what a brilliant video. I mean, I don't know if you've seen that one before. It looks like it's been made fairly recently. What do you feel when you watch that about Gatwick?
I think actually it still gives me goosebumps to watch that video. A year ago I was appointed Chief Operating Officer, and I stood up in front of the management team of about 300 people, and I said that whilst we have 3,000 people who work for Gatwick Airport Limited, the company that I'm Chief Operating Officer for, there are another 27,000 people who work at Gatwick for all sorts of different organisations, and why not try and really sort of instill in that whole group of 30,000 people this sense of family, this sense of everyone working together, and that video I think does a really nice job a year on of demonstrating how that idea has sort of developed, and you know, I kind of look forward to seeing more and more of that working together that you hear about in the video.
Well, it's great for you to join us this morning for this brief Q&A with you, and we're getting shots as well of the airport coming through. It looks like a huge operation there, Chris. So let's talk about your role in this, if I may. We can kick that off, because as Chief Operating Officer, maybe not a lot of people, you know, especially in schools, understand what that role means. So just take us through what a Chief Operating Officer does at Gatwick.
So I'm responsible to our board for the entire operation of Gatwick Airport. I have 2,600 people who work for me, and I'm responsible for about £170 million a year of expenditure. And the teams that work for me run across the security team, working in the terminals, working on the airfield, working in the baggage systems, working on the logistics of getting our goods in and our waste away, the engineering teams, procurement, working on risks and resilience to make sure that we're ready for things like snow, ice, etc., etc. So yeah, I mean, it's a very wide role. It's hugely interesting, and yeah, definitely keeps me entertained on a day-to-day basis.
Sounds like you've got a lot on there. I mean, clearly it's a busy role. You didn't start off as a Chief Operating Officer, though, so talk us through that. Talk us through your career, maybe from leaving college or uni to where you are now. Just briefly, please, Chris.
Yeah, no problem. So I did GCSEs and A-levels, as many of the people who are watching today did, I'm sure. And I then went to university in London, to Imperial College, and I did a chemical engineering degree and worked for Nestle for 6 years. I did some work in manufacturing, in maintenance, in projects, and then I got an opportunity to join Gatwick. And my first job at Gatwick was looking after the baggage system for North Terminal. I then was promoted to a senior engineering manager position, and in 2010 became head of engineering, which is probably one of my most favourite jobs. And today the head of engineering works for me, and I'm constantly reminding him how lucky he is to be the head of engineering at Gatwick. I did that for a couple of years and then became head of security. And then, having done that for 3.5 years, I was asked to do a really big project where we moved British Airways, EasyJet and Virgin between the terminals on 3 rather exciting nights in January of 2017. And as part of that piece of work, I was then asked to become Chief Operating Officer almost a year to the date.
Fantastic. It just shows you, doesn't it, how you can start off in a role like you started off at Gatwick, doing something at the time, probably not realising the bigger picture, but now you do.
Absolutely.
So but it's important to work in those operations, isn't it, in those areas of Gatwick, or any operation, in any business, really.
Yeah, and I think as I described my role, you know, there are a number of times where I took a sideways move to go from Nestle to Gatwick, or where I was head of engineering and then became head of security, and they just give you some much wider experiences, and it's only through having done all those different roles that you then in a position to, you know, compete for the Chief Operating Officer role and be a contender, because you've seen all these different aspects of the operation.
Well, I don't want to miss out on the students who've asked you some questions this morning. We've already had a few in coming through live. So for Mr. Bain's class, advice would you give to a student looking for their first job? So kind of going back to what you were saying earlier. So if you were starting off again, what advice would you give yourself, I suppose?
I mean, I think it sort of goes without saying that when we're recruiting, we are looking for people who've put the effort in academically, but that's not the final word in terms of how to go about getting jobs, because actually what's equally important is the people. If you imagine these 30,000 people that work at Gatwick Airport, they're interacting with our passengers day in, day out, and I want them to be doing that in a way that makes our passengers advocates of Gatwick Airport. And you're only going to be an advocate if you've had a great experience whilst you've been here, and that responsibility sits with all 30,000 people who work here. And so you're going to want someone who has put the effort in academically, but is also somebody who can engage with passengers, help them with their problems, and it's that combination, I guess.
Yeah. Interesting question came in earlier. I mean, looking at the size of the operation and looking at the planes coming in regularly, I think almost one a minute, isn't it? How do you deal with the stress of all of that in your role? Looking very calm this morning under pressure here, but how do you deal with the stress of being a crew?
I think we talked a little earlier about how in recruitment it's not just about what you've done academically. I play the clarinet once a week in a band in the centre of town, and I like to go running, and these are the sort of things that I think is important to have outside of work to make sure that you can process through some of the more challenging days, because they do come. I sit here thinking that there are one or two that have been quite exciting, and when you've got one of those days under your belt, then it's good to have a stress release somehow. And I think having something outside of work is important as well.
Is important, yeah, absolutely. So opportunities at Gatwick, as you would expect, schools are asking you about any opportunities for 16 to 18-year-olds, and I know to sort of double up on one of the questions, you do take on apprentices as well. So can you tell us a little bit about that and what apprentices have brought to your business over the years as well?
Yeah, I mean, the majority of the roles that we recruit for start at 18, and we bring a lot of security officers in to our team. We've probably recruited 200 or 300 security officers a year for the last couple of years. And what's nice when I look at my team of 2,500 people is that in the last 12 months, 250 of them got a new job and were promoted in some way, and that's throughout the organisation. So once you're here at Gatwick, the opportunities for new jobs are absolutely there. But in the new year, I think the 5th of February, we're going to be back with a Learn Live session looking at apprenticeships, which will coincide with our recruitment, because you're right, I've supported through my time in engineering and now as Chief Operating Officer our engineering apprenticeship programme, where we take on a few people as young as 16 onto an apprenticeship scheme, accredited, where you work for 4 years on an apprenticeship, and pretty much every apprentice that we have ends up staying here and becoming a technician. And I was at a recognition event recently where I was shaking hands with some of the 25-year service technicians who started at Gatwick as apprentices 25 years ago. So clearly we must be doing something right.
No, exactly, and it must be a valuable asset to your business as well, bringing those in each year. And you've been doing this for about 40 years now, I believe.
Absolutely, yeah. And we had another event. I get to go to a lot of dinners as Chief Operating Officer. This time it was recognised in the 40 years of apprenticeships, which was again superb. And we invited back some of the people who'd retired, and it was great to have that whole group together. Our Chief Executive, my boss, was an apprentice when he started his career, and so we've got a real sense between us of how important that is.
I'm going to ask you a technical question now, and one that comes up quite a lot about technology in the workplace. In your opinion, Chris, will planes ever be flown by robots?
I'd never say never. I think I was at an event last night at the House of Commons looking at sustainable aviation, and there we were talking about electric planes, so maybe still flown by people, but with the ability to fly without burning fossil fuels. And you can imagine how much quieter an electric plane would be and how much less pollution an electric plane would create. Yeah. And even if it was just for takeoff and landing, which is the part of the process that generates the most noise for local residents, even if you could just do that part electrically, then it would make a massive difference. So, there are people out there working on all these things as we speak. And if you look at how autonomous vehicles have progressed in the last few years, it would be very unwise of me to suggest that we couldn't do that with planes in the future.
Yeah, because a lot of people who come to the airport will probably just see what we're seeing there, the view out the window, they see the planes coming in. But you have a massive operation there going on, underneath, around it, and just as Chief Operating Officer, that brings its own challenges to try and keep all that together. How important is it for you to have a really strong team behind you? I guess that's the question there. And how do you feel supported? I mean, it's obviously important for you to feel supported in your role as well.
No, it's hugely important to have a great team, and I am very lucky. The Chief Operating Officer who I took over from a year ago built a really strong team, and I've continued in that vein. So I have 10 or 11 people who work directly for me, who look after each one of those elements that I talked about earlier, the security team or the terminals team or the engineering team, and they're all great professionals who kind of then take the baton and look after their area, looking to make improvements, looking to deliver a great experience to our passengers, making sure that Gatwick's a great place to work. And these are all important things, and you can't do one without the other. So if you want Gatwick to be a great place for passengers, it needs to be a great place for staff as well.
Well, we've got time for just a couple more questions, just very quickly, if I may, Chris. Before we talked about one of the questions we'd had in about the toughest job you've ever had. It doesn't have to be the one you're in now, obviously, but can I also add to that what you learned from that as well? So obviously, what's the toughest job and what did you take away from it?
I think probably one of the most difficult jobs I had was when I moved from engineering to being head of engineering to being head of security. I was an engineer by trade. I'd always done engineering jobs, and this was the first time that I wasn't doing an engineering role. And at the same time, that team of security officers, I don't think they'd historically been given a voice really, and so one of the most important things that I learned from that role was just how important it is to listen to people, particularly who work for you, and if you are prepared to take the time and prepared to listen, then they will in return go that extra mile, put in that extra effort, and that's how you deliver a great experience to the passengers at Gatwick.
And finally, again, we did discuss this one earlier about the sort of qualifications that people come to you and work for you, and the qualifications that they have on their CVs, etc. these days. Beyond that, what are you looking for in young people? So what else? What other skills and qualities are you looking at for any young person who's potentially going to apply to Gatwick in the future?
I think so. It sort of depends a little bit on the role that they're applying for. So if you're applying for a security officer role, then we're going to look for someone who has had experience of dealing with customers. Maybe they've worked in shops in their when as part of their weekend work or in evenings, and just started to get a sense that they've done a little bit more than been to school and done well in their exams. If you look at when we're recruiting apprentices, then we're looking for people who've got some practical skills as well, and have maybe got themselves involved in a hobby outside of school, done after school clubs, something that differentiates you from or the other people who are applying, because there'll be a lot of people applying for these roles, and if you want to be successful, then you need to think to yourself, well, how am I going to stand out from the crowd?
That was brilliant advice, Chris. Thank you so much for that. Well, thank you so much again for this morning. What's the rest of the day looking like for you? Busy day?
Yeah,
as always.
Day, absolutely. We, I think today we've got some meetings looking at some capital projects where we make big investments and to expand the capacity of Gatwick or to deliver a better experience for passengers. So I think a few big decisions to come today, but it's been great to have this opportunity just to talk to everyone online. I think before we go, I'd just like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas. We've been really pleased with how the Learn Live project's going. We've had 15,000 people view our videos this year, and so we're really looking forward to coming back next year and carrying on. Yeah, and thank you as well, Chris, for your support for Learn Live as well, and the work we do together. Looking forward to seeing you in New Year in 2018. Would you believe? Absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you again so much. Thank you for the schools who've joined us this morning. Just to let you know, a recording of this broadcast will be made available online for you to watch back. And just again, thanks also for the fantastic views of the airport that we've been getting this morning. And flights coming in. So obviously another busy day there at the airport. Yeah, absolutely. And getting busier as we get towards Christmas. So looking forward to getting everyone off on their holidays and back to their families. And just to the schools again, we will sending out information regarding this recording, but also dates for next year, where we've got some exciting broadcasts already lined up. Thank you so much, Chris. Have a great day, and I'll speak to you again. Thank you. Bye.